Ferrari has made big changes after the chairman's words. McLaren insider leaks why Oscar has been struggling, and all the latest news in F1. Do consider subbing to the channel. When Ferrari's president tells their superstar drivers to talk less and focus on driving, you know there's serious drama brewing in the Formula One paddock. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming. One former F1 driver just completely flipped the script on who's really to blame for Ferrari's struggles this season. Picture this. You're Charles Leclerc or Lewis Hamilton, two of the most talented drivers on the planet, sitting in what should be championship-winning machinery. Instead, you're watching McLaren drivers celebrate victory after victory while you're left picking up the pieces of another disappointing weekend. Frustrating doesn't even begin to cover it. The storm started brewing after Ferrari's absolutely disastrous Brazilian Grand Prix. While their World Endurance Championship team was celebrating a dominant double championship victory in Bahrain, their Formula One squad was dealing with a nightmare scenario in Sao Paulo. Both Leclerc and Hamilton retired from the race with crash damage, turning what should have been a point-scoring opportunity into a complete disaster. Ferrari president John Elkann wasn't having any of it. Speaking at an event in Milan, he didn't hold back his frustration. He called Brazil a huge disappointment and made some pretty pointed comments about his team. Elkann praised the mechanics who consistently deliver lightning-fast pit stops and the engineers working tirelessly to improve the car. But then came the kicker. He said the rest wasn't up to par. His message to the drivers was crystal clear. Focus on driving, talk less, and remember that finishing second in the championship isn't impossible. Elkann emphasized that Ferrari wins when it operates as a united team, pointing to their WEC success as proof that when everyone works together, great things happen. Now, you might think that's reasonable feedback from a team boss watching millions of dollars go up in smoke. But former Formula One driver Chandhok had a completely different take that's got everyone talking. Chandhok didn't mince words. He posted on social media with a simple but telling "ouch" before diving deeper into what he sees as the real problem. According to Chandhok, if Ferrari had built a car as competitive as McLaren's this season, both Leclerc and Hamilton would have been genuine title contenders, fighting for race wins instead of struggling to reach the podium. Here's where Chandhok's analysis gets really interesting. He's placing the blame squarely on the car's performance, not on the drivers or any other aspect of the team that Elkann criticized. In Chandhok's view, the root of Ferrari's problem is brutally simple. The car just hasn't been fast enough this year. Think about the implications of that statement. We're talking about Charles Leclerc, who's proven he can extract maximum performance from machinery and has secured 7 podium finishes this season despite the car's limitations. We're talking about Lewis Hamilton, a 7-time world champion who knows exactly what it takes to win races and championships. If Chandhok is right, these two drivers have been doing everything possible with inferior equipment. The numbers tell a compelling story that supports Chandhok's argument. Ferrari hasn't won a single Grand Prix this season. Let that sink in for a moment. One of the most storied teams in motorsport history, with 2 exceptional drivers, hasn't managed to cross the finish line first even once. Meanwhile, McLaren has been consistently competitive, regularly challenging for wins and podium positions. The championship standings paint an even clearer picture. Leclerc sits 5th in the Drivers' Championship, a full 92 points ahead of his teammate Hamilton, who's in 6th. But here's the kicker: Leclerc was actually in the fight with Max Verstappen and George Russell for podium positions, until Verstappen's incredible late-season surge of 7 consecutive podiums ended those hopes. This situation becomes even more painful when you consider what might have been. If Chandhok's assessment is correct, and Ferrari had delivered a car capable of matching McLaren's pace, we could have been watching an entirely different championship battle. Instead of Max Verstappen cruising to another title, we might have seen Leclerc and Hamilton genuinely fighting for race wins and championship points. The Constructors' Championship tells another part of this story. Ferrari currently trails Red Bull by just 4 points for third place, which shows how competitive the midfield battle has been. But being in a fight for third place isn't where Ferrari expects to be, especially with their driver lineup and resources. Jenson Button, another former world champion, added fuel to the fire with his own pointed response to Elkann's comments. Button suggested that maybe Elkann should lead by example, which is a pretty direct criticism of the team's leadership rather than the drivers. This whole controversy highlights a fascinating dynamic in Formula One. When teams struggle, there's always a question of where to point the finger. Is it the drivers not extracting enough performance? Is it the engineers not developing the car quickly enough? Is it the strategists making poor decisions? Or is it the leadership not providing the right direction and resources? Chandhok's perspective suggests that sometimes the answer is simpler than anyone wants to admit. Sometimes the fundamental package just isn't good enough, regardless of how talented the drivers are or how hard everyone works. You can have the best pit crew in the world, brilliant strategists and legendary drivers, but if the car isn't fast enough, none of that matters come Sunday afternoon. The timing of Elkann's comments also raises questions about pressure and expectations. Ferrari is a team that expects to win championships, not fight for occasional podium positions. When you're paying top dollar for drivers like Hamilton and supporting talent like Leclerc, the pressure to deliver results is immense. But as Chandhok points out, even the best drivers can only work with what they're given. What makes this situation particularly intriguing is that we're seeing different perspectives on the same problem. Elkann sees issues with unity and focus within the team. Chandhok sees a fundamental car performance problem. Both could be right, or one analysis might be closer to the truth than the other. The reality is probably somewhere in between, but Chandhok's argument carries significant weight because of his racing experience and current role as a commentator and analyst. He understands what it takes to extract performance from an F1 car and recognizes when drivers are maximizing their equipment versus when they're leaving time on the table. As we look toward the future, this controversy might actually be healthy for Ferrari. Sometimes teams need honest external perspectives to truly understand their problems. Whether they listen to Chandhok's assessment or continue focusing on internal unity and driver communication, the goal remains the same: building a car capable of challenging for wins and championships. The 2025 season represents a crucial opportunity for Ferrari to prove whether the issue was indeed car performance or something deeper within the team structure. With both drivers returning and presumably improved machinery, we'll get a clearer picture of what the real problem has been. What's happening behind closed doors at McLaren? Are they really sabotaging Oscar Piastri's championship dreams to favor Lando Norris? The conspiracy theories are flying, but someone who knows the team inside and out just dropped some bombshells that might change everything you think you know about this explosive Formula One drama. I'm about to break down the most controversial story in motorsport right now, and trust me, by the end of this video, you'll have a completely different perspective on what's really going down in the McLaren garage. We're talking about a championship battle that's gone from domination to desperation in just a matter of weeks, and the insider revelations that are finally setting the record straight. Let me paint you a picture of just how dramatic this season has been. Back in August, after the Dutch Grand Prix, Oscar Piastri was sitting pretty at the top of the championship standings, leading his teammate Lando Norris by a commanding 34 points. The Australian rookie was looking unstoppable. His McLaren was the fastest car on the grid, and everyone was talking about this incredible underdog story unfolding before our eyes. Fast forward to today, and it's like we're watching a completely different movie. With just 3 races left in the season, Norris has not only caught up but taken the championship lead, while Piastri sits 24 points behind. Even more shocking, Piastri hasn't even stepped on the podium in his last 5 races. That's not just a slump, that's a complete collapse of what looked like a guaranteed championship run. Naturally, when something this dramatic happens in Formula One, the conspiracy theories start flying faster than cars around Monaco. Social media has been absolutely buzzing with accusations that McLaren is deliberately sabotaging Piastri's car to hand the championship to Norris. The theories range from subtle setup changes that slow down Piastri's car to strategic decisions that favor the British driver. Some fans have even suggested that McLaren's sudden pace drop-off is too convenient to be coincidental. But here's where things get really interesting. Kim Keetle, who was Piastri's personal trainer until the end of last season, just went on the Sen Breakfast podcast and absolutely demolished these conspiracy theories. This isn't just any random commentator we're talking about. This is someone who was literally in Piastri's corner, who knows the inner workings of his preparation and his relationship with the team better than almost anyone. Keetle didn't mince words when he was asked about whether McLaren could be favoring Norris. He acknowledged that from the outside, the situation might look suspicious, but he stressed that he knows exactly how McLaren operates, and favoritism just isn't part of their DNA. According to him, McLaren handles these internal battles very fairly and professionally. What makes his perspective so valuable is that he's not speaking from ignorance. Even though he admits he's not in the inner circle this year, he spent enough time around the team to understand their culture and approach. When someone with his level of access says the conspiracy theories don't hold water, that carries serious weight. But Keetle didn't just dismiss the theories without offering an explanation for what's really happening. His analysis of Piastri's struggles is actually much more nuanced and, frankly, more believable than the sabotage stories floating around online. The reality of Formula One, according to Keetle, is that car development never stops. While McLaren was clearly the fastest team earlier in the season, their competitors weren't just sitting around accepting defeat. Red Bull has been working overtime to catch up, and Max Verstappen remains one of the most fierce competitors in the sport. Meanwhile, Mercedes and Ferrari have been having their own strong races, making it much harder for any single team to dominate consistently. This constant development cycle means that the car that was untouchable in July might suddenly find itself struggling in November. It's not conspiracy. It's just the brutal reality of modern Formula One, where margins are incredibly thin and advantages can evaporate almost overnight. But there's another factor that Keetle touched on that's absolutely crucial to understanding what's happening to Piastri, and it's something that goes beyond just car performance. He mentioned something that every racing fan needs to understand. Confidence and psychological momentum in Formula One are absolutely everything. When Keetle talks about Piastri potentially losing confidence or struggling with difficult tracks, he's highlighting something that casual fans often overlook. These drivers aren't just piloting machines around a track. They're operating at the absolute limit of physics and human capability, where being off by just a tenth of a second can mean the difference between victory and finishing outside the points. At this level, once doubt creeps into a driver's mind, it can create a snowball effect that's incredibly difficult to reverse. Suddenly, the car that felt like an extension of your body starts feeling alien. Setup choices that used to work perfectly begin feeling wrong. Racing instincts that were sharp start getting cloudy. The psychological pressure Piastri is facing right now is almost unimaginable. He's a 24-year-old driver trying to win his first world championship on the biggest stage in motorsport. The entire world is watching, analyzing his every move, and now he's dealing with conspiracy theories suggesting his own team is working against him. That level of mental pressure would break most people, and it's certainly enough to affect even the most talented racing drivers. Keetle also revealed something fascinating about how McLaren manages their internal driver battles. He explained that McLaren has always been a team-first organization, which creates this incredibly delicate balancing act. On one hand, they're trying to build a culture where both drivers work together for the good of the team. On the other hand, these are two elite athletes whose biggest competition is literally sitting in the garage next to them. This dynamic becomes even more complex when you consider that both drivers have massive egos, which is actually necessary to compete at this level. You can't be successful in Formula One without an almost irrational belief in your own abilities. Managing two drivers with championship-level confidence while keeping them focused on team success is like trying to conduct an orchestra where both lead violinists think they should be the soloist. The situation at McLaren got slightly easier when they clinched the Constructors' Championship a few races ago. Now, according to Kettel, both drivers can focus purely on their individual championship battles, without having to worry about team politics or shared priorities. This should theoretically level the playing field and allow the better driver to emerge naturally. What's particularly interesting about Kettel's analysis is how it contrasts with some of the more dramatic narratives we've been seeing online. Instead of suggesting McLaren is deliberately handicapping Piastri, he's painting a picture of a young driver going through growing pains during the most pressure-filled period of his career. The timing of Piastri's struggles also supports Kettel's explanation rather than the conspiracy theories. The performance drop-off coincides perfectly with other teams improving their cars and the championship pressure intensifying. If McLaren really wanted to favor Norris, they probably would have started that process much earlier in the season when the point differences were smaller. McLaren's leadership has been adamant about their neutral approach to the driver battle. CEO Zak Brown even went so far as to say they would rather lose the championship to Max Verstappen than artificially favor either of their drivers. That's a pretty strong statement that suggests the team's commitment to fair competition runs deeper than just public relations. The real story here isn't about corporate conspiracy or team favoritism. It's about the incredible mental and physical demands of Formula One racing, especially for young drivers trying to achieve something that only a handful of people in history have accomplished. Piastri is learning that having the fastest car isn't enough if you can't handle the psychological pressure that comes with fighting for a world championship. Looking ahead to the final 3 races, Piastri faces a monumental challenge. Not only does he need to find the speed and confidence that made him so dominant earlier in the season, but he also needs to do it while Norris has momentum and the psychological advantage of leading the championship. The truth is, sometimes in sports, talented athletes go through difficult periods that have nothing to do with external sabotage or conspiracy. Sometimes the pressure gets to people. Sometimes other competitors raise their game. Sometimes the margins are so thin that small changes in confidence or car setup can have massive consequences. Piastri's story isn't over yet, and if there's one thing we've learned about Formula One, it's that championships can change hands incredibly quickly. The same psychological factors that might be working against him now could easily swing back in his favor with one good race result. The conspiracy theories make for exciting social media content, but the reality is probably much simpler and more human than people want to admit. We're watching a young driver learn what it takes to compete at the highest level of motorsport, and that education sometimes comes with painful lessons about pressure, confidence, and mental toughness. The Formula One silly season is heating up, and there's one driver who's been making headlines for all the right and wrong reasons. Lawson, the young New Zealander fighting for his Formula One future, has just been compared to Max Verstappen himself. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming. It might not be enough to save his career. Picture this. You're a promising F1 driver. You get demoted from Red Bull Racing after just 2 races, and suddenly you're fighting not just for a promotion, but for your very survival in the sport. That's exactly where Lawson finds himself right now, and what happens next could change everything. Let's dive into why experts are calling Lawson the next Verstappen, why that comparison might actually be working against him, and what this means for the dramatic Red Bull driver lineup decisions coming in just a few weeks. First, let's talk about what's got everyone comparing Lawson to the four-time world champion. Former Formula One driver Christijan Albers recently made some eye-opening comments about the young Kiwi. According to Albers, Lawson possesses that same fearless attitude that makes Verstappen so special. He's not afraid of anyone on track. He doesn't back down from fights, and when there's drama happening in a race, you can bet Lawson is right in the middle of it. This became crystal clear at the Brazilian Grand Prix, where Lawson put on what his team called a Ministry of Defense performance. Starting on soft tires, he switched to mediums and then had to defend his position for an incredible 52 laps on increasingly worn rubber. 4 different drivers tried to get past him, starting with his own teammate, and all 4 finished within 2 seconds of each other at the checkered flag. It was the kind of gutsy, never-give-up drive that reminded everyone why Red Bull signed this kid in the first place. But here's where things get complicated. That same aggressive approach that makes Lawson exciting to watch is also what's putting his career in jeopardy. This season alone, he's picked up penalty points on 4 separate occasions, every single one for causing collisions. He's been involved in more incidents than almost any other driver, and there's this strange magnetic attraction between him and Yuki Tsunoda that seems to result in contact whenever they're near each other on track. Albers puts it perfectly when he says that whenever something happens on track, Lawson's involvement is usually around 80%. That's not necessarily a compliment in Formula One, where consistency and clean racing are just as important as raw speed and fighting spirit. And this is where Lawson's Verstappen comparison starts working against him. Yes, Max is aggressive and fearless, but he's also incredibly smart about when to pick his battles. Verstappen has that rare ability to be ruthless when he needs to be, but also to back out of fights that aren't worth having. Lawson hasn't quite figured out that balance yet. The numbers tell a story of a driver who's undeniably talented but frustratingly inconsistent. After his demotion from Red Bull Racing, it took him 4 or 5 races just to find his confidence with the Racing Bulls car. His breakthrough moment came in Baku, where he qualified 3rd in tricky wet conditions, and then backed it up with a brilliant 5th-place finish in the race, holding off his Red Bull replacement Tsunoda in the process. But for every brilliant performance like Brazil or Baku, there's been a costly mistake or penalty that reminds everyone why consistency is so crucial at the highest level of motorsport. Racing Bulls team principal Alan Perman believes in Lawson's talent and thinks he has what it takes to return to Red Bull, but even he acknowledges that the young driver needed significant work after his early season struggles. The clock is ticking louder than ever for Lawson, because Red Bull has set a deadline that's approaching fast. The team will make their final driver decisions for the 2026 season after the Las Vegas and Qatar races, meaning Lawson has just 2 more opportunities to make his case. Here's where it gets really interesting though. Sources close to the situation suggest that Red Bull advisor Helmut Marko, who essentially has the final say on driver decisions, has already indicated to Ishak Hadjar that he'll be getting the Red Bull promotion. If that's true, then Lawson isn't even fighting for the top seat anymore. He's fighting just to keep his Racing Bulls drive. The competition for that second Racing Bulls seat is fierce. Tsunoda, despite his own consistency issues, brings experience and has shown flashes of genuine pace. There's also Arvid Lindblad, a highly rated Formula 2 prospect who represents the future of the Red Bull driver program. For Lawson, it's no longer about proving he deserves a promotion. It's about proving he deserves to stay in Formula One at all. What makes this situation so fascinating is how it reflects the broader challenges facing young drivers in today's Formula One. Raw talent isn't enough anymore. Teams need drivers who can deliver consistent results, avoid costly mistakes, and contribute to the overall development of the car and team. Lawson clearly has the speed and fighting spirit, but the question marks over his consistency and decision-making are real concerns for a team that's trying to challenge at the front of the grid. The Brazilian Grand Prix performance showed what Lawson is capable of when everything clicks. That 52-lap stint on medium tires, defending against multiple attacks while managing tire degradation and race strategy, demonstrated racecraft that you simply can't teach. But it also highlighted the double-edged sword of his aggressive approach, exciting to watch, but potentially costly if not properly managed. Marco's recent comments about Lawson not yet showing the consistency needed for a Red Bull seat aren't just critical feedback. They're a roadmap for what the young driver needs to focus on. In a sport where margins are measured in thousandths of seconds and single points can decide championships, teams can't afford drivers who are occasionally brilliant but regularly involved in avoidable incidents. The comparison to Verstappen, while flattering, might actually be setting unrealistic expectations. Max didn't become the complete driver he is today overnight. It took years of development, learning from mistakes, and gradually understanding when to be aggressive and when to be patient. The problem for Lawson is that Formula One doesn't always give drivers the luxury of time to figure it out. As we head into these crucial final races of the season, Lawson finds himself in the most pressure-filled situation of his career. He needs to show that Brazilian Grand Prix performance wasn't a one-off, while also demonstrating the consistency and maturity that Red Bull clearly values. It's a balancing act that could define not just his immediate future, but his entire Formula One career. The next few weeks will reveal whether Liam Lawson can channel that Verstappen-like boldness in a way that secures his future, or if that same aggressive approach will ultimately cost him his place on the grid. One thing's for certain, the pressure is on, the stakes couldn't be higher, and the Formula One world will be watching every move. What happens when a Formula One legend throws down the gauntlet at Ferrari's most powerful man? Well, buckle up because Jenson Button just delivered one of the most ice-cold responses in recent motorsport history, and the internet is absolutely losing its mind over it. Picture this. Ferrari's president makes some pretty harsh comments about his own drivers, telling Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc to basically shut up and drive. But then, a certain 2009 world champion steps in with just 6 words that have sent shockwaves through the Formula One community. Today, we're diving deep into this explosive drama that's got everyone talking about leadership, accountability, and what it really takes to win in the cutthroat world of Formula One. Now, before we get into the juicy details, let me paint you the full picture of what went down. John Elkann, Ferrari's president, was speaking at an event in Milan following what he called Brazil's huge disappointment for the team. Neither Hamilton nor Leclerc managed to see the checkered flag in what's been, frankly, a pretty dismal 2025 campaign for the prancing horse. But instead of taking responsibility or offering support, Elkann decided to throw his drivers under the bus in spectacular fashion. Here's exactly what he said, and I'm telling you, this is the kind of comment that makes headlines for all the wrong reasons. Elkann praised the mechanics for being first in pit stops and acknowledged the engineers working to improve the car. But then came the kicker. He said the rest of Ferrari was not up to par, and specifically called out his drivers, telling them they need to focus on driving and talk less. Imagine being Lewis Hamilton, a 7-time world champion, or Charles Leclerc, Ferrari's homegrown talent, and hearing your own team president essentially tell you to pipe down and do your job better. But here's where it gets really interesting. The timing of these comments couldn't have been more significant. They came right after Ferrari's sports car division, AF Course, had just secured the World Endurance Championship hypercar title in Bahrain. So while one part of Ferrari was celebrating victory, the Formula One side was getting publicly criticized by their own leadership. Talk about mixed messages from the top. Now, Elkann did try to frame this as motivation, talking about how Ferrari wins when united and how the team needs to come together. But let's be real here. Publicly calling out your star drivers and saying they're not up to par is hardly the kind of unifying leadership that builds championship-winning teams. It's the kind of move that creates division, doubt, and frankly, makes you wonder what's really going on behind closed doors at Maranello. Enter Jenson Button, the mild-mannered British gentleman who won the 2009 World Championship in one of the greatest underdog stories in Formula One history. Button, who now works as a pundit for Sky Sports, saw Elkann's comments posted on Sky F1's Instagram account. And his response, pure gold. 6 simple words that cut straight to the heart of the matter. Maybe John should lead by example. Now, you might think that's a pretty tame response, but in the world of Formula One diplomacy, this is basically the equivalent of throwing down the gauntlet. Button, known for his measured approach and gentlemanly conduct throughout his career, doesn't usually throw shade like this. When someone with his reputation and respect in the paddock speaks up, people listen. The reaction from fans has been absolutely explosive. Comments are pouring in calling Button a legend, praising him for speaking truth to power, and questioning Elkann's leadership approach. One fan perfectly captured the sentiment, saying how unprofessional it was for Elkann to make such public criticisms, and how it reveals everything about the culture problems at Ferrari. Another fan urged Elkann to keep quiet and focus on actually turning Ferrari into a winning outfit again. And here's the thing that makes this whole situation even more fascinating. This drama is playing out against the backdrop of Ferrari's longest championship drought in decades. We're talking about a team that hasn't won a Constructors' Championship since 2008, and their last driver's champion was Kimi Räikkönen way back in 2007. That's nearly 2 decades of Ferrari falling short of their ultimate goals, despite having some of the most talented drivers and biggest budgets in the sport. So when you look at it from that perspective, Button's response becomes even more pointed. Here's a team president publicly criticizing drivers and staff when the real question should be about the leadership and decision-making at the very top. It's classic deflection, and Button called it out with surgical precision. What makes this even more interesting is the cultural implications. Ferrari has always prided itself on being different, on having that Italian passion and flair that sets them apart from other teams. But there's a fine line between passionate leadership and publicly undermining your own people. Great leaders take responsibility when things go wrong and support their team through difficult times. They don't throw them under the bus in public forums. The timing couldn't be worse for Ferrari either. They're currently sitting 4th in the championship standings, having fallen behind Red Bull after Brazil. While mathematically they could still finish 2nd, the season has been largely disappointing given the expectations and resources at their disposal. Hamilton joined Ferrari with huge fanfare, and Leclerc has been their golden boy for years. These aren't drivers who need public criticism. They're world-class talents who need support and better strategic decisions from their team. Button's response also carries extra weight because of who he is and what he represents. This is a guy who won his championship with Brawn GP, a team that emerged from the ashes of Honda's withdrawal from Formula One. He knows what it takes to build a winning culture from the ground up, and it's not about publicly calling out your people. It's about creating an environment where everyone can perform at their best. The broader implications of this controversy go beyond just Ferrari. It raises questions about leadership styles in modern Formula One, about how teams should handle pressure and disappointment, and about what really creates a championship-winning culture. When legendary figures like Button feel compelled to speak out, it suggests this goes deeper than just one poorly chosen comment. What's fascinating is how this 6-word response has somehow managed to encapsulate everything wrong with Ferrari's approach right now. It's not about the drivers talking too much or not focusing enough. It's about leadership that takes responsibility, makes tough decisions, and supports their people through adversity. Button's message is clear. If you want to see change in your organization, start by looking in the mirror. As we head toward the end of the 2025 season, this controversy will likely continue to rumble on. Ferrari still has races to fight for that second-place finish, but now they'll be doing it with this cloud of leadership questions hanging over them. Whether Elkann takes Button's advice to heart and starts leading by example remains to be seen. But one thing's for sure, when a gentleman like Jenson Button calls you out this publicly, you've definitely crossed a line. What happens when a Formula One driver's championship dreams start slipping away? Today we're diving into Oscar Piastri's recent struggles and the brutal reality check his manager Mark Webber just delivered. If you think professional racing is just about speed, you're about to discover it's actually about something much deeper. The McLaren garage in Brazil told a tale of two drivers heading in completely opposite directions. While Lando Norris celebrated another victory, Oscar Piastri was left picking up the pieces of what many considered a championship-caliber season. The Australian driver, who started this year as a legitimate title contender, now finds himself trailing his teammate by 24 points after a weekend that perfectly encapsulated his recent run of misfortune. Let me paint you the picture of just how dramatically things have shifted. Over the past 6 races, Norris has absolutely demolished Piastri in the points battle, outscoring him by an astronomical margin of 115 points to 57. That's not just a slump. That's a complete reversal of fortune that has turned what should have been an internal McLaren celebration into a stark reminder of how quickly momentum can shift in Formula One. The Brazil weekend became the perfect storm of everything that's been going wrong for Piastri. First, he crashed out of the sprint race on Saturday, immediately handing valuable points to his competitors. Then, during the main race, while running in second position and seemingly set for a strong points haul, disaster struck again. A collision during a restart that involved Mercedes driver Kimi Antonelli and ultimately took out Charles Leclerc earned Piastri a 10-second penalty that dropped him well down the field. Here's where the story gets really interesting though. Mark Webber, the former Red Bull driver who now manages Piastri's career, didn't offer the usual corporate speak about bad luck or unfortunate circumstances. Instead, he delivered what can only be described as a masterclass in tough love management. Webber's message was crystal clear. It's time for Piastri to look in the mirror and find something deeper than just raw talent. According to Webber, this isn't about motivation. Piastri isn't lacking the desire to compete or the hunger to win. What Webber is talking about goes much deeper than surface-level motivation. He's talking about character, about finding those internal reserves that separate good drivers from great champions. It's the difference between someone who performs when everything is going well versus someone who can dig deep when the walls are closing in. Think about what Webber is really saying here. This is Piastri's 3rd year in Formula One. He's no longer the rookie learning the ropes or the sophomore finding his feet. He's now expected to be a fully formed competitor capable of mounting serious championship challenges. But championships aren't won just on talent alone. They're won by drivers who can respond to adversity, who can find extra performance when the pressure is highest, and who can maintain their mental strength when everything seems to be going wrong. The timing of this message is crucial. Piastri has gone 5 races without a podium finish, while his teammate has been racking up victories and strong finishes. That's not just about car setup or strategy calls. That's about one driver finding ways to maximize every opportunity while another is letting crucial points slip away. In the ultra-competitive world of modern Formula One, those margins make all the difference between title contenders and also-rans. Webber's reference to finding deep motivations is particularly telling. Surface-level motivation might get you through a practice session or even a single race weekend. But deep motivation, the kind that comes from your core beliefs about what you want to achieve and who you want to become, that's what carries you through months of grinding competition when the results aren't coming and the pressure is mounting. The penalty incident itself reveals something important about where Piastri's head is at right now. While he protested his innocence both during and after the race, Webber acknowledged that in today's closely contested field, any time penalty becomes devastating. The margins are so tight that a 10-second penalty essentially destroys any chance of a strong points finish. Every mistake gets amplified. Every error gets punished severely. But here's the thing that makes this situation so fascinating from a psychological perspective. Piastri isn't dealing with a lack of pace or a clearly inferior car. McLaren has arguably the fastest package on the grid right now. The difference between him and Norris isn't about equipment or opportunity. It's about execution under pressure, about making the right decisions in crucial moments, and about maintaining composure when things start going sideways. Webber's approach represents a calculated risk. He could have chosen to publicly support his driver, deflect criticism, and blame external factors. Instead, he's chosen to challenge Piastri publicly, essentially putting additional pressure on him to respond. This suggests that behind the scenes, they've likely had multiple conversations about these issues, and Webber believes that public accountability might be exactly what Piastri needs to turn things around. The concept of character that Webber keeps emphasizing is something that's often misunderstood in professional sports. It's not about being a good person or having strong moral values, though those things certainly matter. In this context, character means having the mental fortitude to perform your best when circumstances are least favorable. It's about finding ways to extract maximum performance from yourself, even when confidence is low and results aren't coming. Looking at the broader championship picture makes Piastri's situation even more complex. This season represented a golden opportunity for him to establish himself as a future champion. McLaren's car has been competitive enough to fight for wins, and the traditional powerhouses like Red Bull and Ferrari have shown vulnerabilities. Missing this window doesn't just cost him points this year, it potentially affects his standing within the team and his negotiating position for future seasons. The psychological aspect of being outperformed by your teammate creates its own unique pressures. Every weekend becomes a direct comparison with someone driving the same equipment. There's nowhere to hide, no excuses about inferior machinery or strategic disadvantages. When your teammate is winning races and you're struggling to reach the podium, that creates a mental burden that can become self-perpetuating if not addressed properly. What makes Webber's challenge particularly intriguing is his understanding of what it takes to compete at the highest level. As a former driver who experienced his own share of ups and downs during his career, Webber knows firsthand about the mental side of championship competition. His willingness to be publicly critical suggests he believes this approach will ultimately benefit Piastri's development as a complete competitor. The path forward for Piastri requires more than just better luck or cleaner weekends. It demands a fundamental shift in his approach to pressure situations and his ability to find extra performance when it matters most. With several races still remaining this season, he has opportunities to demonstrate the character Webber is challenging him to develop. The question is whether he can access those deep motivations and translate them into the kind of performances that separate good drivers from championship-caliber competitors. This story ultimately represents the harsh reality of elite motorsport, where talent alone isn't enough and mental strength often determines who rises to the top. For Piastri, Webber's challenge represents both a criticism and an opportunity to prove he belongs among Formula One's elite. Picture this. With just 3 races left in the Formula One season, Lando Norris finally has his hands on the championship lead after an incredible weekend in Brazil. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming. The very conditions that could hand him the title might also be the ones that snatch it away. Today we're diving deep into why Las Vegas could be the ultimate wildcard in this championship fight, and why even a 24-point lead might not be enough to guarantee Norris his first world title. Let me start by painting the picture of where we stand right now. After that spectacular double victory in Brazil, winning both the sprint and the Grand Prix, Lando Norris has completely flipped the championship narrative. Just a few weeks ago, Many were writing off his title chances, but now he's sitting pretty with a commanding 24-point advantage over his teammate Oscar Piastri and a massive 49-point cushion over three-time world champion Max Verstappen. Those numbers sound impressive, right? 24 points ahead with 3 races to go should feel comfortable. But here's where the story gets interesting, and why veteran Formula One commentator Martin Brundle is sounding alarm bells about what's coming next. The Brazil weekend was absolutely perfect for Norris. He claimed pole position in qualifying after a heart-stopping final run where he had to deliver under immense pressure. His first set of fresh tires had been wasted with a lockup into turn 1, leaving him with just one shot at glory. But when it mattered most, he produced a lap that was fastest in all 3 sectors, showcasing the kind of composure that separates championship contenders from champions. What made that performance even more remarkable was the context. The qualifying session was incredibly tight, with the entire field separated by mere tenths of a second. One small mistake, one tiny slip-up, and his championship hopes could have taken a serious hit. Instead, Norris delivered when the pressure was at its peak, and that mental strength will be crucial for what's coming next. The races themselves told the story of a driver who has finally found his championship rhythm. Both starts were absolutely perfect, and his safety car restarts were flawless. It's worth noting that Sunday's race marked the 7th consecutive Grand Prix won from pole position this season, highlighting just how important qualifying has become in modern Formula One. Norris understood this completely and delivered when it counted most. Those 33 points from the Brazil weekend have transformed the championship mathematics dramatically. Norris now holds what's effectively equivalent to a full race victory margin over Piastri and almost 2 complete race wins over Verstappen. In pure numbers, this looks like a commanding position heading into the final stretch. But here's where Martin Brundle's warning becomes absolutely crucial, and why this championship fight is far from over. The next race takes us to Las Vegas, and this venue presents challenges that could completely change the dynamics we've seen throughout the season. Las Vegas is unlike any other circuit on the Formula One calendar. The race takes place on Saturday night under artificial lights, creating a spectacular visual spectacle, but also unique technical challenges. The ambient temperatures are significantly cooler than what teams have experienced in recent rounds, and this temperature difference affects everything from tire performance to aerodynamic efficiency. The street circuit nature of Las Vegas compounds these challenges. Unlike purpose-built racing circuits, the temporary street layout offers limited grip levels, especially in the early stages of practice and qualifying, when rubber hasn't been laid down on the racing line. The surface can be notoriously slippery, and finding the optimal setup becomes a complex puzzle that teams must solve quickly. These conditions could prove to be McLaren's biggest test of the season. While Brundle expects the team to perform strongly at the traditional circuits of Qatar and Abu Dhabi that conclude the championship, Las Vegas represents an unknown quantity that could deliver unexpected results. The cool temperatures particularly concern experts because they affect tire behavior dramatically. Formula One tires have very specific operating windows, and when track temperatures drop significantly, getting the tires into their optimal performance zone becomes much more challenging. Teams that have optimized their setups for warmer conditions throughout the season might find themselves struggling to adapt quickly enough. This is where the championship could take another dramatic turn. Norris might have a healthy points advantage, but as Brundle pointedly observes, Formula One has a way of turning situations around in a heartbeat. A mechanical failure, like the reliability issues Norris faced earlier in the season at Zandvoort, could instantly close the championship gap. Even more concerning is the possibility of contact between drivers. We've already seen this season how quickly things can change when teammates clash, as happened between Norris and Piastri in Montreal. With both McLaren drivers still mathematically in the championship fight, Team management becomes crucial in these final races. Max Verstappen's presence in this conversation cannot be ignored either. While 49 points might seem like an insurmountable deficit with 3 races remaining, we're talking about a driver who has proven repeatedly that he thrives under pressure and can produce extraordinary performances when his back is against the wall. Verstappen has won 3 world championships for a reason, and writing him off completely would be premature. The psychological aspects of championship pressure also come into play during these final races. Norris has never been this close to winning a world title before, and handling that pressure while maintaining peak performance is one of the most difficult challenges in all of motorsport. Every session, every lap, every decision becomes magnified when you're carrying the weight of championship expectations. Las Vegas could also favor different driving styles or car characteristics than we've seen dominate in recent races. Some drivers excel in low-grip conditions, while others struggle to adapt their techniques. The unique demands of street racing, combined with the night race format and cooler temperatures, create a perfect storm of variables that could shuffle the competitive order. Team strategy becomes absolutely critical in these situations. Tire choices, fuel loads, setup compromises between qualifying and race performance. Every decision matters exponentially more when championship points are at stake. McLaren will need to execute flawlessly across all departments to maintain their advantage. The Las Vegas weekend structure also presents unique challenges, with practice sessions limited and track evolution happening rapidly as rubber gets laid down. Teams have precious little time to find the optimal setup. Those who adapt quickest to the changing conditions will have a significant advantage. What makes this championship fight so compelling is that despite Norris's current advantage, genuine uncertainty remains about the final outcome. Las Vegas could either extend his lead to an almost unassailable margin, or it could provide the opportunity for Verstappen or even Piastri to close the gap dramatically. The next few weeks will determine whether Lando Norris can handle the pressure of leading a championship fight and convert his current advantage into his first world title, or whether Las Vegas will prove to be the curveball that changes everything in this thrilling conclusion to the Formula One season. Picture this. After 22 years away from Formula One, one of America's most iconic car manufacturers is making a thunderous return to the grid, and they're bringing the biggest names in modern racing with them. This isn't just any comeback story. This is Ford teaming up with Red Bull in what could be the most significant partnership shakeup Formula One has seen in decades. What's happening in Detroit this January will change everything we think we know about the sport's future. But before we dive into why this matters so much, let me ask you something. When was the last time you saw a major American automotive giant go head-to-head with the European powerhouses on racing's biggest stage? The answer might surprise you, and what's coming next will blow your mind. We're about to witness Formula One history in the making, and it all starts with an announcement that has sent shockwaves through the racing world. Red Bull and their sister team Racing Bulls have just confirmed their season launch date for 2026, and they're doing it in the most American way possible, right in the heart of Detroit, Michigan. Here's what makes this absolutely massive. Ford Motor Company is hosting their Motorsport season launch on January 15, 2026, at the iconic Michigan Central Station in Detroit. But this isn't just Ford's show. Both Red Bull teams will be there to unveil their new liveries and celebrate what might be the most important engine partnership announcement in recent Formula One memory. Think about the timing here for a second. This event happens less than 2 weeks before preseason testing begins in Barcelona. That means teams will have their final preparations locked in, their cars will be ready to hit the track, and fans worldwide will get their first real look at what could dominate the 2026 season and beyond. Now, let's talk about why Ford's return is such a game changer. The blue oval hasn't been seen on a Formula One car since 2004 when they owned the Jaguar team. Here's the incredible twist. At the end of that 2004 season, Ford sold Jaguar to a little-known energy drink company called Red Bull. Fast forward 22 years, and these same two companies are now joining forces as partners, with Red Bull having transformed into one of the sport's absolute powerhouses. The story gets even more fascinating when you understand what led to this moment. When Honda announced their withdrawal from Formula One at the end of 2021, Red Bull faced a crucial decision. They could either find another engine supplier or take the bold step of creating their own power unit. They chose the latter, launching Red Bull powertrains with the ambitious goal of becoming a fully autonomous manufacturer. But building a competitive Formula One engine isn't something you do alone, especially with the 2026 regulations bringing massive changes to power unit technology. The new hybrid systems will feature increased electrification, sustainable fuels, and technical challenges that push the boundaries of automotive engineering. This is where Ford's century-plus experience in automotive innovation becomes absolutely crucial. Mark Rushbrook, Ford's global director of racing, put it perfectly when he said this partnership is about much more than just racing. The knowledge and technology developed through Formula One directly influences the cars and trucks that millions of people drive every day. When you're pushing the limits of efficiency, power, and sustainability on race tracks around the world, those innovations eventually make their way to everyday vehicles. What makes this partnership even more intriguing is the cultural alignment between these two companies. Ford brings 125 years of racing heritage and an uncompromising drive to win. Red Bull brings their audacious, championship-winning mentality that has dominated Formula One in recent years. When you combine that kind of experience with that level of ambition, you get something special. The Detroit launch represents something deeper than just a car unveiling. It's a statement about American automotive excellence returning to the world's most prestigious racing series. The location itself, Michigan Central Station, carries symbolic weight as a testament to American industrial innovation and revival. For Red Bull, this launch marks a significant transition period. Following major management changes in 2025, including the departure of former team principal Christian Horner, Laurent Mekies has stepped into key leadership roles across both the racing operation and the powertrains project. This Detroit event becomes their opportunity to show the world that Red Bull's competitive spirit remains unchanged despite the organizational shifts. The technical challenges ahead cannot be overstated. The 2026 Formula One regulations represent the biggest shakeup in power unit technology since hybrid systems were first introduced. Teams must master new levels of electrical energy deployment while working with sustainable fuels that meet strict environmental standards. The learning curve will be steep, but the potential rewards are enormous. From Ford's perspective, this return to Formula One aligns perfectly with their broader electrification strategy. As the automotive industry moves toward hybrid and electric technologies, the lessons learned from Formula One's cutting-edge hybrid systems become invaluable for developing next-generation consumer vehicles. The global reach of Formula One has exploded in recent years, attracting new and diverse audiences worldwide. This expansion creates unprecedented opportunities for automotive manufacturers to showcase their technology and innovation on an international stage. Ford's partnership with Red Bull positions them to capitalize on this growing popularity while demonstrating their commitment to performance and sustainability. What's particularly exciting is how this partnership could influence the competitive landscape of Formula One. Red Bull has proven their ability to challenge established manufacturers like Mercedes and Ferrari. Now, with Ford's engineering expertise and resources backing their power unit development, they could potentially set new standards for performance and reliability. The anticipation building toward this January launch reflects the significance of what's at stake. Both companies are betting big on their ability to compete at the highest level of motorsport. The reveal in Detroit will give us our first glimpse of how this partnership translates into actual racing machinery. As we count down to January 15th, the excitement continues to build. This isn't just another season launch, it's the beginning of a new chapter in Formula One history. Ford's return after more than 2 decades away, combined with Red Bull's proven championship pedigree, creates the perfect recipe for something truly spectacular. The Detroit event promises to be more than just a car unveiling. It's a celebration of American automotive heritage meeting modern Formula One excellence. When those covers come off the new liveries, we'll see the visual representation of one of the most significant partnerships in recent motorsport memory. Mark your calendars for January 15th, 2026. What happens in Detroit that day could reshape the future of Formula One racing for years to come.